this is everybody unless Al shows up.
Right.
Okay, well, we will call to order the meeting of the Fergus Falls Port Authority. Today is Tuesday, June 20th, and we do have a quorum, and it is 4:32 p.m. The first item on the agenda is approval of the meeting minutes from April 17th, 2023, and approval of the agenda. Is there a motion for that approval?
So moved.
Thanks, Steve. In a second.
I'll second it.
Thanks, Anthony. All in favor of the approval, say aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. And that motion carries. The next item on the agenda is a bond resolution, and we'll call on Bill for some information.
All right, thank you. So in your packet, you had the actual resolution and then a memo from Baker Tilly explaining this financing. And I just put together a short PowerPoint, just hitting those high points of that. But of course, what we're financing is phase 2 that we just started moving dirt across the river. So the Port Authority financed phase 1 previously for about 1.46 million, probably right in there. And now moving to phase 2. And so we're looking at financing $2,170,000 with this bond issue. And part of that is financing donations coming in. So I'll explain that a little bit as we get in here, but this is to wake up. Oh, here we go. So our calendar of where we're at. So back in August of 2021, the City Council approved and adopted ordinance number 16 that gave the Port Authority the ability to issue bonds up to $3 million total. And back in December now of 2022, we added another $700,000 to that when we were looking at estimates for phase 2. We needed to just get that authority up a bit, and we are coming in within that total of $3.7 million. We're here tonight for the Port Authority to consider a resolution authorizing the sale of the bonds. And then we'll be back on July 17th. So that morning, Baker Tilly will receive bids for the bonds. It'll come to the Port Authority to consider the award of those bonds, and then it'll go to the City Council to consent to that issuance and the pledge of the general obligation of the city then, because it's the city that's backing up these bonds. And then we'll receive the proceeds on August 17th. Okay, so the purpose of this resolution, so we're authorizing Baker Tilly, they are our bond consultants, they're our municipal advisor is the technical term of that, to take bids on behalf of the city, on behalf of the port. Authorizes us as city staff to work with Baker Tilly to prepare the official statement. That's what goes out, what those prospective bidders will look at. And actually, I've already sent all that information in, so Baker Tilly has that. They're in the process of getting that prepared right now. Then we approve the terms of the proposal. So July 17th at 10 a.m. We have the list of principal maturities that have been built, the redemption date, or we can call those bonds a bit early, provides security, that's the general obligation of the city, and then instructions for bidding. And then this resolution, Baker Tilly wanted me to point this out to you, does not, preclude the city from making some changes, postponing the sale. Let's say something really weird happened in a month. We could, we're gonna pull this back, we'll just hold the cost for a while and we'll go back to the market. They're not foreseeing that to happen, but as we all know from the last couple of years, things happen that we, aren't always expecting. So we're not locked in by what we do tonight. We can pull the plug on it if we had to. Okay, so here's the annual debt service and then the net levy that gets calculated. You can see the total principal there adds up to $2,170,000. We have the principal heavier in those first 5 years. You can see that because we have some donations that are coming in over the 5-year period. So we've estimated that as they come in, let's pay that as principal right away. So we pay less interest and then pay off the bond sooner rather than, holding those donations when they come in. Certainly, we have lots of donations that have already come in, that will come in by the time we're well in, into construction, and even early into 24. We're not financing those. We're not gonna finance money that will be here shortly. We'll carry that internally. That's why that's built a little heavier on the principal side. We have the coupon that Baker Tilly is estimating right now, coming up with total principal and interest then of $2,761,904. Then you calculate what's 105% of that if you're gonna calculate your property tax levy, and that allows for delinquents. If people, if you don't pay their taxes, we need to build in a little cushion. As the fund would start to accumulate some funds, I always look at that every year. So I don't just automatically levy 5% more than what the debt service is. Once there's a cash balance, I start backing that levy back down a little bit. But Baker Tilly has to look at this. We get this to the county auditor, that here's 105%, which would be the required levies. We take off the revenue. That's the donations that we would be financing over those remaining 4 years, basically. That comes to $614,200, leaving the anticipated levy. You can see the first levy we put in place for 2024 would be $150,702. So the tax levy committee of the city council is starting to work on that. I'll be bringing that through them, building in those tax levies. So, just pop down here. Okay, we skipped one. This thing skips around. The sources and uses of funds on this, you can see the par amount of the bonds, the $2,170,000. Our planned issuer equity contribution, so that's cash that the city is putting in. I can go through that list a little bit so you know what that is. The fundraising equity, that's those donations I talked about that we'll basically have in hand. The total fundraising goal is $2 million for phase 2. And uses of funds, the total project cost for this phase 2 is $5,353,745. Cost of issuance, underwriter's discount, and a little bit of rounding brings that up to that total of the uses. Let me just glance here. So for the city contribution, basically, of that 1.8 million that's going in there, we're using the remainder of our ARPA funds, the American Recovery and Recovery Plan, 713,000, estimating that. Projected remaining sales tax balance once we've paid off the library bonds, that needs to get transferred to the general fund. Looking at putting that here of about 500,000. We have some money in a parking lot budget to go towards the parking lot over here on phase 2 of 100,000 that we've accumulated. Municipal state aid for streets, for some of the street work related to this, and pavement with the parking lot as well, 160,000. We have an old abatement in the city that has some funds left over, about 125. And then we have funds coming from our utility funds for the water portion, sewer, and stormwater portion. That all comes up to that 1,888,500. And then of the 2 million, like I said, for the fundraising, we're looking at that. And just to give you a little, hope I have that, don't have that with, but the Vadine Trust has already made 2 payments to us, so of $333,000 each. So we're up to $667,000 that we've already received from them, plus some various other donors in town that have been starting to send their donations in. And then the other commitments that have been made, certain ones stating we're going to pay when construction starts or when you get to early 24, so we're not bonding for those costs. So that's kind of a quick summary of what we're doing. Again, through the Port Authority, has been authorized by the City Council to bond for this. So, any questions that I'm missing that I neglected here?
This is a good review. I'm wondering the 2 equity lines there, and that seems to be quite a bit.
Yeah.
Is that helping the cost of this at all because we've got so much equity? Or
Well, we don't have to finance so much, so certainly
So that
then
part of it is,
interest, we're not paying as much interest, so.
Yeah, the rate doesn't change because of it.
Nope, the interest rate probably isn't changing.
Okay.
And interest rates have certainly gone up from what we got accustomed to For years, what did they,
Right.
you know, think back to when we financed the arena, it was less than 1% interest on that, and we paid it off in less than 5 years, I think. I mean, we won't see that again, but average coupon 3.56 they have built in here. So,
And then you explained this before, but if you could do it again for me, I'd really appreciate it. Why do we do this through the port and not through the city directly?
right. So the Port Authority has great power to issue bonds, and we are certainly tying this to redevelopment of downtown and spurring on economic development of our whole Main Street area, which is, of course, what the Port Authority is about, being a tool for that. And also, the Port Authority, you don't go through the cost and process of going through a general election and having that voted on separately.
Oh, I see,
So,
okay, yeah.
yep,
Thank you,
so all those reasons tie in to the port.
thanks.
So if there's no other questions, is there a motion to approve the resolution?
Yep,
Is that the right?
All after that?
Tom and
Second.
second by Steve, all right, and we don't, just all in favor of the resolution, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign, and that resolution carries.
thank you. So Doug Green, our municipal advisor, will be here on the 17th with results of the sale, and he'll be here presenting that to you, and of course, I'll be back for that meeting as well, but good deal.
Is he coming in person?
He is coming in person. We did tell, it's one thing the city council has made clear, that any of our consultants, we want them here in this room in person. We haven't always had the best luck over the screen. So, and Doug had 2 other bond sales going tonight, so that's why he couldn't be here in person, and I didn't bother doing a Zoom with him. I thought, we can go through the information, I mean, but he can bring the actual results and what they found in bidders, so. All right.
Thank you so much, Bill.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Okay, and next on the agenda is just an update on the dairy property, and so I can turn it over to Clara to give us.
Yeah,
Where we're
well,
at.
and we can maybe just dive kind of straight into any kind of discussion that we want to have, but you all received an email update from Andrew regarding the bonding situation with the dairy, so we do have funds that are available for the 2 rail crossings that will make access to the site a lot easier, as well as trail funding and just updates along the general riverfront. We have not necessarily restarted the process of the sale between the port and the city, but we will come back to you in the future with information about that, because we do have acquisition money in the bonding that will help cover that sale.
We'll do a purchase agreement for that, right? We'll
Yep. we'll do
initiate a new.
But what we could talk about today is just where we sit with the actual redevelopment of the site, and then what's necessary for doing, like, helping to do the rail updates and things like that, starting those processes in earnest. I think it was maybe 2 meetings ago, we had discussed having Port Authority members reach out to developers on the list that got sent around. I don't know that anybody's done that. That's okay if you haven't. I did talk to Gary Thompson, who's a developer here in town and has developed further down along the river, about, you know, what his thoughts were on our process. He admitted to me that he actually did not look at our RFP either time that it was sent to him, because he's just too busy with other stuff and the economy hasn't been great and it's just not a project he's wanted to touch. But he gave some good insights into maybe why other developers also have not been responding. A lot of it is the economy, the uncertainty there, and the fact that they'd have to, you know, acquire the site and build stuff. And so one of the things we talked about was potentially making it more obvious up front to developers who are interested that we'd be willing to do, like, chunks of the property rather than the full 24 acres. Because he thought maybe the size of it could be a hindrance and people don't want to take on that size. So that's language that we could change in our RFP to make that more clear. Other things he brought up were the rail crossings. He thinks that's probably an issue, so the fact that we're addressing those is going to be helpful. And then he also just thought maybe the density of the surrounding neighborhoods and the age of the surrounding neighborhoods is something maybe other developers are considering. I don't know how we necessarily address that other than maybe if developers are reaching out, encouraging them to do multifamily or higher density as a good fit with the surrounding neighborhoods. So those are just some of his thoughts. I don't know if anybody's talked to anyone else. No? Okay, well, we can just continue to make the RFP information available. I think what I can do is go through the RFP and just remove anything that ties it to a direct timeline. Maybe just clarify some of the points that Gary Thompson brought up. And then include updates on the bonding projects so that if people are looking at the dairy site, they know that these things are gonna be handled by the city. But now, Anthony, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about
Yeah,
Great Crossings.
I mean, I was kind of brought up, and I talked to Ben about this in the sense that, like, we've now got this money from the state, and as a city, we've been kind of quite remiss in, we get money allocated, and then we're always asking for extensions, and we consume a lot of goodwill because we don't actually execute. And at some point in time, the state might just say, well, screw Fergus Falls because they never actually do anything. So I think, and that was where I think I was looking for clarification as to who's going to lead getting this done. We've got the trail, portion, which is, I mean, that's a fairly simple transaction from a sales agreement. But the rail crossings in Bryan, I know, has already started conversations, but we all know that the railroad is a law unto itself and can take forever. But I think if we can at least start executing on the rail, that's going to help the RFP because now we've actually got access. At the moment, what we talk about is theoretical. It's like if we can get this done, and I think, if we can, as you say, put into the RFP, we've got this money to do these projects, and then once we got some contract with Genesee, Wyoming, then we can update it to say this is the timeline for physically getting it done. Then all those things are going to help a developer because we're actually doing something. Because it seems like we talk about it, but we never actually it's hard to execute and get stuff done because we don't have the money to do it. So, and whether or not it's the Port Authority or a combination, it doesn't matter. But I think we need a team that's going to help execute it and get it done.
Is the law effective on August 1st? Is that, or is,
I think it was June.
okay, so it is effective now?
Yep.
Good, okay.
Which law was that?
The bonding statute.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And we think it's 4 years that we have to expend.
Yeah, and apparently if we encumber the funds, there's no timeline, is what
Oh.
Deed is telling us on the,
Yeah. Bill's been there
RTC.
before.
yeah, there's not great clarity on that.
Yeah.
4 years is a general rule of thumb.
Okay.
So
That's
in
for
your email,
bonding, but this is a cash, right? But is it still, but generally 4 years.
But-
We also,
Yeah.
with you, we don't want to wait 4 years.
I mean, but it's cash based upon our commitment to doing the downtown. So we've leveraged the funds for this project. Downtown Phase 2 is what was kind of the matching city funds to help get this cash from the state. So, because basically you have to kind of show that you're going to match the money. So
There isn't
we
a-
leverage this project to get access to some more money. So this is, as you say, it's cash without restrictions.
Well, there's restrictions.
Yeah.
The restrictions are, it has to be used on the things that are identified in the law,
Yeah.
which are the things we're talking about. So we couldn't spend it on streets or anything like that.
Yeah.
If you want to be clear.
Yeah.
well,
I
in
was,
your email, you list, the acquisition, the rail crossing. So I mean, that is where it would go, right?
Yeah.
Those four things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and I think all those are going to enhance the sale or the saleability.
For sure.
So, I can bring it up at the council too, and then we can see how you know, the council. I mean, if the railroad wishes us to commit to obviously giving up a crossing, then that's all going to have to go back to the council to approve. But, I mean, the discussion we had outside was that, of the meeting, was that if the railroad is insisting upon crossing arms, then legally you don't need crossing arms on a single track. You only need them on a double track. You know, that might be something that we can leverage to say, you know, we don't want to give up a crossing, you know, because crossing arms are spendy. They add quite a lot to the project. We never know. And it's not like that track it's not getting a ton of use. So, you know, from a safety point of view, one crossing over two isn't going to make any difference.
So I didn't hear that, but how do we acknowledge that we want the money? I mean, how do we formally do that? Or get the process going that you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
The money's available. We just need to, I don't know if it's reimbursable or if we get the cash in hand, but it's available whenever we want to start the project.
Certainly, the first thing we'll do is get the purchase agreement going, so we get the parcel sale,
Oh,
because then that's the first 1.2 million that we've already expended, so that would be a reimbursement, so
Yeah.
we would be ready.
That will
Yeah.
flush the coffers again.
What's
Bill will be rolling in it.
I'm just very pleased that this all came through. So thankful.
This is Bill excited.
And that timeline is up in the air a little bit simply because I'll be careful what I say, but
Right.
with one of our pending litigation matters, we're trying to get advice from legal counsel as to when we should actually do the transaction, if that impacts our process at all. We have a mediation scheduled in July, so that's kind of a date that we're looking at. But as soon as the attorney gives us the green light to do the transaction, we'll have that purchase agreement in front of you. And that could move
Then-
relatively quickly. I think we can move straight to closing on that, once the council and port approve it, so.
So then once that happens, then the city it'll be a city project for the trail that they'll move forward on, and the port would still have the timeline for the railroad part since we own that portion.
The city will have to technically be the entity that does all the work because the appropriation is to the city.
Okay.
But the port will still play the role of future development, and I think we just keep the conversation between the two
Yeah.
ongoing.
So you're asking for kind of a timeline in some ways of just making sure that this continues to move forward?
Yeah,
in
so
that-
we keep the momentum going.
Yeah.
Do you wanna speak to that, Brian? Is it like a 23 construction, 24 construction?
Yeah, no, good evening. I don't have a schedule for you on that, but like you mentioned, Councilmember Hicks, that, yeah, when we got some estimates back in September, you know, the signal warning lights and gates were about 4 times more than the crossing itself, about, you know, $550,000. I have made some reach out to MnDOT and along with some other consultants too. I'm kind of looking for what are the warrants for that signal, because that's a little unknown due to the expense. But I think other than that, yeah, we can proceed probably. I think it's pretty self-explanatory with the exchange of the existing Buse crossing to Broadway. I would recommend though that we do gotta take a deeper look at the west end elements of St. Andrews. Other than the crossing, the alignment geometrically lines up St. Andrews. There's some private property acquisition that's gonna have to be had and discussed with the adjacent owners and everything. So other than an overall layout, and how we predict these crossings when they go, but St. Andrews is gonna be a little bit more difficult and time consuming, given some of the unknowns at this present moment. But in regards to the Broadway, yes, we can start pursuing that with the railroad. Formalizing an agreement that would generally come back to this committee for accepting that.
Yeah, because obviously this defines access to, but if it's a city project on the rail crossing itself, that doesn't cause any hassle, really. I mean, it's going to be Port Authority property on one side and it's city property on the other side. So it's whose jurisdiction is it?
Has to come to the city, maybe has to be a city project, huh?
I think so. As long as the port doesn't object, I would think we'd be okay. And I think it's safe to say we're not at odds with one another.
Yeah.
city of the port, thankfully, yet, yeah.
And I would think though during exchange too, there would be some dedicated public right of way too, through the process, so. Revert, bring it within the cities, bring it the right of way.
Would that be in the purchase agreement
Something
for
to
the
think
for the
about.
trail?
Can be. Can incorporate that in.
Because otherwise, the city owns a trail that they have to cross our land to get to. Then we might be a little bit more like pay a toll. You can go over it.
Let's consider
You
that.
could, but I'm not sure if you're gonna want those ongoing maintenance costs either.
You haven't seen the fees we were thinking of. I mean, the Port Authority Commission doesn't live the standard it does. Just like
So generally speaking, the Port Authority,
Pretty big
Is a
talkers after
friend,
getting the 4 million.
neighbor, and supporter of
Yeah.
our city.
yeah, yeah,
But we have to maintain a certain lifestyle.
yeah, exactly. I mean, the Port Authority retreat is not going to be like the cities. The city retreat. We want a real plane and a real sort of seats. I mean, don't we, Tom?
Yeah.
So what are you thinking, green light from legal? Is that at 30 days, 60 days, or what are you thinking? Or do we know?
I think sooner than later.
I'll take that as less than 60.
Yeah, I'm just waiting on a response,
Okay.
yeah, which I probably need to prompt follow-up. But as soon as we get that green light, we'll put a purchase agreement together. 1.2 million is the price that we're looking at, unless anybody objects, but.
I mean, I think it's exciting. I mean,
Yeah,
it adds a
Thank you for all your work.
yeah.
Yeah,
it's-
well, I think we were kind of surprised by that outcome.
Yeah.
I think we didn't know that was gonna come together, so.
Not all
Thought
of
it
it.
wasn't going to, and then
No.
it
End of
did,
the wire.
so.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Okay.
So at this point in time, we don't really need to do anything then as such.
I guess not.
Yeah, I think the first step is the purchase agreement, and then just being mindful of keeping things moving. I think
Yeah.
point well taken. The trail piece, we need to engineer the actual trail. That obviously happens before construction. I'm guessing we're looking at next year for
At the earliest.
actually trail construction. And I think it's prudent to just keep things moving along
Yeah.
on the timeline.
What actually are you purchasing? I mean, it has been divided into two parcels, and that was based upon the, when we had
LCMR.
yeah.
That-
But I mean,
that
we're
parcel.
not bound by that any further, by that.
Well, are
In
we
the-
in the legislation now?
Yeah, I listed the acreage in the
Okay,
legislation.
okay, so it's at the
unfortunately.
13.64.
It's like 11 point.
Yeah.
11.68 is what was
Alright.
sent in this time around, but the reality of it, I believe, is 11.57.
And I suppose the value, I mean, you have to have enough acres to support a value of 1.2 million as well, so.
Yep.
And then I shouldn't say but I was the one who wrote it. We wrote the legislation broad enough with the kind of extra money, so it talks about public amenities or other public amenities. So it gives the city and the port a little bit of, assuming there's money left over, which we anticipate there'll be, maybe not after hearing property acquisition, but if there's money left over, it gives us a little bit of flexibility to decide what will further enhance the property and make it that much more marketable. So those decisions will probably be after everything else is done, so we see what's left.
Yeah.
I appreciate Claire getting that feedback. I thought we did say in the last RFP that we'd break it up.
We did, I'm just wondering if we need to make it more obvious.
Okay.
Like, put it, because it was kind of buried in there, so maybe people missed it.
Sure.
Or, so, I don't know. If
Okay.
we just get it on one of the first pages.
Sure.
You'll update all those items
Yeah.
that you,
Yeah, we'll just
Outline.
have it available instead of saying if you respond between the
Yeah.
state and the state, it'll just be there. And if people are interested, they can pull it off and look at it and
And
ask
I
questions.
think, if some of these things sort of start to come together, we know we've got a schedule on the railroad, then it might be then worthy of having another push when we've got
Yeah,
some dates fixed
Yep.
that we can sort of say construction is going to start on the rail crossings on, June of 2024. you know, then at least then it would be worthy of pushing then, because now it's a defined piece of property. You know, if the sale's gone through as well, once the sale's gone through and we've got a definition on construction timeline on the crossings, we know where they're going to be, both of them. Then, as you say, then we've got something new to tell people that was not in the last RFP.
It's probably wise to be very public about our milestones too, and just communicate about progress and share it out there. I mean, those things take off a lot of times and get
Yeah.
a lot of views, so
Yeah, that's true.
just gotta get it in the right hands.
Okay, anything else? All right, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you. Should I go on?
Yes.